Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Battle of Ontario Hockey Podcast, featuring a Senators fan and a Leafs fan. We're here to talk about your two favorite teams, the rest of the NHL, local hockey, hockey all around the world, and to bring back memories from your favorite hockey teams and players. If you love the Leafs, Sens, B-Sens, NHL, or any other hockey, including the late Belleville Bulls, you are going to want to tune into our podcast. The gloves are off, the buckets are spinning, let's get the chirps flying. Welcome to the Boo Club!
Hey guys, welcome into episode 8 of the Battle of Ontario Hockey Podcast, Season 2. I am Flem, and beside us here in this Pay It Forward Sports nice-looking golf shirt, we have El Presidente, Jeffrey Broeky. Broeky, how's it going, buddy? Still enjoying the vacation? Looking good out there in Mexico?
Yeah, I'm just wearing one of my 5 golf shirts. You got my, oh wait, you only got one. Just kidding, let me check. Actually, it's been a little drowsy the last couple of days. Bit of rain here, but still no snow. I hear you guys got some snow back home.
Yeah, so, we got some snow, but
not a lot. But sorry, I'm just trying to get a little organized here. But nothing's really changed except for the last hour with my Ottawa Senators. They have been absolutely horrible. We'll get into that. But I just watched the first period next door at the sports bar, and they're up 1-0 on the Carolina Hurricanes, who are one hell of a team. They're one of the top teams in the league this year, so that's a good start.
For sure. Before we get into anything, too much, Broeky, I wanted to touch on kind of a story that you and I are following, and that was the backup goalie last night for the Colorado Avalanche. So as everyone knows, last night the Leafs and the Avalanche played at the ACC, but the Avalanche backup goalie got hurt sometime before the game, and they couldn't get their AHL backup in time. So they called up a young man from Picton, Ontario, right around us, Jet Alexander. I know Broeky coached him for AAA for a few years. Jet was part of my baseball team for a couple of years as well as an affiliate player. So we both know him, and we just want to say congratulations to Jet on making the show. Such a cool thing, hey, even the circumstances. And I don't know what Colorado's doing. You lose 8-3. Give the kid a minute here. Like, I don't know. I saw Engvall scores from like the blue line on the top of the circle. Like, Jet can play net. He's no David Ayres here. So I thought he was legitimately going to get in last night, Broeky. I was a little upset about that. Glad the Leafs win. Don't want to say anything about that. But just congratulations to Jet. Such a cool story, and a great young man for that to happen too.
Well, yeah, you're the one that broke the news to me, and I had I don't have Wi-Fi all the time here, right, or internet. So you broke the news to me via text because I can text, and I was like, what's going on right now? Like, I'm thinking, first I'm like, I didn't even know he was signed to them, but then I'm like, no, it's got to be some sort of backup situation.
One thing here too is he was the winning goalie of the first ever Pay It Forward Sports hockey tournament as well too. Do you remember that? So he's had the championship belt around his waist.
Well, Jet was one heck of a goalie back in the day. I know I only coached him for a short time with Patty Shear and Terry Gable, but we had one hell of a team. There was like, I want to say like 8 guys that made the OHL there with that team, and he wasn't even one of them. He ended up playing Tier 2 and now university, but he was one hell of a goalie. He still is. Oh, yeah. And it's funny we say that because, a guy like Freeland, and, we give him the credit. They had one good team, and they had a pretty good team, but, it wasn't as dominant as they were without Jet. You put Jet on one of those other teams, that 3-3 tournament we had, and they could have easily won. So we're giving our credit to Jet. Freeland was good. We gave him the MVP award, and it was fun. We had a blast at the tournament. I think everybody loved it. That was our first ever tournament last March. Can you believe that was that long ago? It was awesome to have. We also had another guy who tried out for Pittsburgh with Shaw Boomhauer in that tournament. So our tournaments have some good players, and with golf we had a bunch of pros or amateur pros, or how do you call them? Anyways, so we get a lot of good players in our tournaments. That's awesome to see. Congratulations, Jet. No matter how you get there, you had a game, you got a sniff, and we want to try and get him on the podcast. I did send him a message to see if he'll come on. I haven't got a response, but why not? I'd love to just hear about what's it like to
for sure
play, but you got to warm up, you got to be in the room, you got to be around the guys. That's one hell of a caliber game or team you're on, and you're playing against the Leafs. I don't know if the Leafs were his favorite team growing up. Maybe they were. Like, that's got to be some sort of dream come true just right there. So it'd be awesome to get some feedback on that. So we definitely will. Congratulations to Jet.
couldn't get much cooler than that, so we'll move on here. But just one more thing I want to say about the Jet situation. A shout out to my buddy and a guy that helps us pay it for sports, Pistol Peter Norton. I don't know if you know this or not, Broeky, but you know Pete, right? He umpired for us there, but he scored a hat trick against Jet in that tournament, and he was the first guy to text me last night. He says, "Is that the kid from the tournament?" I said, "Yeah." "Isn't that the guy who scored a hat trick on?" He says, "I'm going to the bar. I'm going to the bar, and I'm telling all the ladies my story tonight." So I haven't heard from Pete from last night. So
is that the guy? He helped both. He helped the tournament, and he helped the golf. Am I thinking the same guy?
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah.
What did they do? Go off his ass in or what?
I don't know. That's the story.
Oh, wait, he scored a hat trick. Did he really?
He said everyone says he scored a hat trick. Yeah, because I think Freeland's team won like 14-9. So Pistol must have had a few going off his skates or off his ass or something like that.
I wonder what's going on. He had a couple Chris Tierney.
But anyway, that's Pistol's the new leader of our hockey team now with a hat trick against an NHL goalie. He's taken over the lead of the team now. So congratulations, Pistol Pete. That's one of his moments in life now, you know.
And I think he's in his late 40s, is he not?
He is, yeah. He is for sure.
Attaboy Pistol. Well, we can't wait to have you out more of our tournaments to help out because he does do an awesome job there as well.
For sure.
So, thanks, Pistol. Why don't we talk about one of the breaking things is Bergevin is gone from the Montreal Canadiens. I think that's maybe I'm not pronouncing it right. Bergevin, how are you?
Sorry, can I just interrupt here, Broeky? So just so everyone knows, we do have a guest coming on the podcast a little later. Todd Denault is coming on. He's also a diehard Montreal Canadiens fan, so maybe don't delve too deep into the Bergeron thing because I'm sure he's going to have some comments on it later. But
okay, so do you want to wait for that?
No, go ahead. Just go ahead. We'll cover it a little bit. But
well, I think the basic thing to go on here is Montreal they weren't in a rebuilding stage. They weren't really in a going for it stage. They're kind of caught in the middle, and it's tough with players like Carey Price, the best goaltender in the world when he's on, without a doubt. I mean, when that guy's on, it just showed last year in the playoffs. My opinion, there's a lot of good goalies in the league, but without him, I don't think they beat the Leafs, and I certainly don't think they make it to the finals. So I think that is what basically held on to his life for another few months, less than a year, right? And I think if they would have lost to Toronto, which probably should have happened, maybe we could say that it didn't happen. But I mean, without Carey Price, he's probably gone in the summer. So I mean, I think the writing was almost on the wall. Having said that,
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, I think so because I mean, where were they? I mean, we how are you not sure about that? We both predicted that they were going to have a crappy year.
For sure, but I think
why they're not rebuilding. They're kind of caught in the middle.
He has that relationship with Molson, and there was talks last year, Broeky, is that the talks were that Bergevin didn't want to stay, not that Montreal didn't want him. So from what Elliot Friedman said, it sounded like they wanted to re-up with Molson last year, they wanted to re-up with Bergevin last year. And he was kind of pushing them off, saying, I'm not really sure I want to come back, just playing hardball a little bit. The cards landed perfect for him, and that they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, and he started playing hardball for more money. So I think it got to a point where what Freeman said was that Bergevin wanted more money than Montreal was willing to offer, and so they were kind of stuck in no man's land. And they got to the point where they figured out that Gordon was their man, and Bergevin probably wasn't going to sign or was no longer going to be there. So they pulled the plug on it early and got the guy they wanted to replace him. I'm not so sure that it was Bergevin was on his way out with the organization. It was just so much that maybe he wasn't ready to commit and he wanted more money. And it was just negotiation. You know how it goes. I think.
Yeah, but this where I'm stuck on this funding is they already said Molson, come out and said that he's not his replacement. He said that he only fired so many things that he's actually going to be higher up. And they're going to hire a replacement.
He only said that though because he doesn't speak French. You know the Montreal situation where the GM has to speak French to talk to the media, right? So. Molson's Gordon's kind of like Masai Ujiri in Toronto Raptors. He's not really the GM, but he calls the shots. He's the GM. You know what I mean? So everything the GM that comes into Montreal is going to do is going to be run through Jeff Gordon. Like I think that's just the way it's going to play out. If he spoke French, he'd be the GM.
Having said that, I think that maybe that's a good way to look at it. And having said that, I think it's a positive and a negative. I looked at his comments, and I really think he had a really good tenure in Montreal, and they had some down years, but they also had some good years. Obviously, last year they didn't their best. I think there was a couple years in between there where they went to the third round, I think twice, if I'm not mistaken. So they had some really good years, and I think if that was in Toronto, just for instance, not tripping the Leafs, but they'd be looking at like, holy shit, we had a lot of success, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously the job didn't get done, and maybe they overachieved a little bit more than they probably should have last year, I think, without a doubt. But they still got there. So congrats to him. I think he did a good job. I think he pulled some big trades. He took PK Subban out of there, which a lot of GMs, and there's a guy in Ottawa right now not doing a thing, and it's driving me nuts, but they wouldn't have done that. Like, that takes a lot of balls.
He has balls. He has balls.
And I'm not saying that's good. My point of it is that at least he had that, because there's a lot of guys that won't make big moves like that to bring in a Shea Weber, different type of defenseman. He's also done some other stuff, whether they're good or bad. But, I don't think it's all terrible and a terrible situation. I mean, only one team can win every year. I think they're missing some high-end scoring, like a lot of teams are. Their back end was good. Obviously, that's why they won, and when he's on, he's the best goalie in the world, which helped him out as well. So, but I think at the end of the day, I think it is time to move on. Whether you think he wasn't gonna sign, whatever, I still think for him, I think for the organization, it's time to move on. And there may be other teams near Montreal that it may be time to move on as well.
For sure. So let's pivot off the Canadiens here. I want to talk to another team.
We're going to talk about that lots lately. Yeah.
So I did want to talk about the Senators, and I know you got something you want to get into here. Give me the story with Captain Crybaby here. Why is Brady Tkachuk all upset, Broeky, and what's going down there?
Okay, so let's not just sit there and talk about what our football analyst who doesn't have he just hates something, so no matter what, he's against it. I mean, 99% of the people that watched it, and that goes for analysts, anybody with the game, will agree that you don't do that. They got into a scuffle, which happens. Brady ends up on top, and then Brendan Lemieux rolls over on top of Brady, and then the refs get in, so nobody can really move. Well, Brandon isn't giving up. He's giving shots on the ground, which usually is a no-no. Most guys don't do it. Mm-hmm. So if you're on the ground, what are you going to do? You got to put your hand in his face. There's no question. If it's reversed and you got his hand in his face, then maybe you got something. But when the guy's laying on top of you, you got to do whatever you can. Face washes happen when it's one-on-one like this morning. Yeah. So when something like that, and then you bite the guy, and then you bite the guy again? Come on. I mean, there's no question that the league even supports this. I mean, they gave him, or doesn't support it. They support that this is negative. They gave him a 5-game suspension. And I think maybe Brady was I think if you look at the situation, Ottawa's been horrible. So Brady's probably taking a lot of his frustrations out on what he said. Usually he doesn't do that. Usually he's really, really good. But I think he was over frustrated. This is a cheap shot, spitting, biting. I mean, spearing a guy. I mean, there really isn't many more cheap shots, I think, like that are like that. So I think, and the fact of it is, it wasn't quick, like he just went and bit him quick and twice on a couple seconds later. It wasn't like bite. It was like a bite and then roll and whatever, and then a bite again. I think it might even be 2 different hands. So I think most people around the league, and I'm going to say 95% or more, agree with me that does not belong there. And people are like, well, he had his hand in his face. Yeah, but the guy's on top of him on the ice, and Tkachuk doesn't even have a helmet on. Like, come on, Fleming. If you're in that situation, I'm on top of you, and you got no helmet on, you would put your hand in my face.
Man, I'm just getting on your nerves. I'm just calling Brady Captain Crybaby just for funny. Obviously, the biting was way over the line. Like, it wasn't something that should happen. And you know what? And I think they should come down harder on him. I would have doubled that. I would have went to 10 games. Just because of who it is. Like, he's got a history of being a dirty player. And at some point, you got to draw the line with the guy and say, you know what? 5 games isn't enough. You know what? I need to suspend you for 10. And you know what? If you suspend him for 10, I don't think you get another biting incident, within the next little while, right? I think that sends more of a message in 5. Like, at least it was 5. I give them credit. Like, if you do 1 or 2 games, it costs the guy fuck all. He's not going to give a fuck, right? Like, I don't know what to say. Too bad Ottawa couldn't capitalize on the 5-minute power play. I text you at that. You wouldn't take. But anyway, go ahead.
So, well, no, it's actually been horrible. I haven't been able to watch because of where I am and everything. I've watched some of it, but the internet hasn't been the best, and I'm switching locations. But I got to watch the first period tonight, which was awesome because they're up 1-0. But their game in a whole has been actually horrible. It's frustrating to watch because they're supposed to make a step forward. I think everybody's to blame: the coaches, the GM, and the players. They all are to blame right now. I mean, you can't point your finger at one thing. DJ, and I said this from the start of the year, had, even when they had a better stats. Well, why are they playing, Josh Brown so often, right? Like, he was never healthy scratched once. And in my opinion, he's one of the worst players in the league. And now he's not playing because he's injured. Brandstrom wasn't playing. They kept playing these pylon defensemen who can't move. And it's got me think, like, Pierre Dorian is a rookie general manager who's awesome at scouting. But when it comes to the pro game, bringing pros in, trading for NHLers, signing NHLers, he has a terrible record, So I feel like he's doing well enough to bring these young kids in, and everybody knows that there's a pretty good potential for a future here, but we still need to surround them with quality players. And the players that they've surrounded them with haven't been good at all. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that to me is on the GM. But also, the coach isn't playing the right players enough. And his system seemed horrible. Their defensive structure and their defensive game is the absolute worst in the NHL. I read a stat today that 40% of their games this year, they played 15 games or 20 games maybe. Anyways, 40% they played 20 games. 40% of their games this year, they've allowed 5 goals or more. And 40%, so right there, how many games are you going to win if you allow 5 goals? Probably pretty much none. So now you've got 60% of games that you're trying to win, which how many games are you allowing 3 or 4 goals? It's been pathetic, and it's not to blame one person. I blame them all, and I blame the players have to step it up. But I think the difference from last year and the year before to this year is a lot of those players are still there. And, when you come in for your rookie season, you're working hard, you're trying to prove to the coach. But now it's like there's been guys hurt, guys with COVID. They know they can't really be sent down, and the coach isn't doing anything other than Murray. But so they're not giving that extra 110. They're maybe giving the 95. I watched Zach Sanford the last night, and on one of the goals, I've seen you try harder in a Sunday league for me. It was a joke. It was a swing a stick, and then who's the guy they just got at? So then the guys out front should be Sanford's guy. He's in no man's land. Who knows what he's doing? Godet tries to cover for him, and they end up scoring. But Godet had to come down all the way from the point, which, if you look at the play, some people are like, well, that's Godet's man. No, it's Sanford's man. Sanford's got nobody. So it's just – and that's a guy where, you're supposed to bring in this NHLer-type player with some experience, and you should be one of the hardest workers.
I got kind of something I would say about those tweeners kind of guys that we're talking about, like Sanford, kind of like a Tyler Ennis. And we were talking about this last week, and so I was kind of thinking – if every NHL team carries 12 forwards, let's say there's 30 teams. I know there's more.
We're going to carry more, but yeah.
Yeah. So let's say there's 360 forward spots, in the world. Is Tyler Ennis one of the most 360 most skilled hockey players in the world? Yeah, for sure he is. But is he one of the most 360 players that contributes to a team winning? I don't think so. Sometimes skill isn't enough. And I think sometimes they just don't do the right things. Is he one of the fastest players? Sure, of course he is. He ranks there, but sometimes hockey IQ, hockey sense, and just knowing where to stand sometimes is so important. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much skill you bring to the table. It's what you'll do to help your team win. And sometimes a guy like Sanford, if he would just stand in the right spot in that situation you're talking about, he can eliminate a goal, and it doesn't look good. No one notices it really. But when at the same time, now it's going to make Godet look bad, right? Everyone says that's his man kind of thing. Hurts the team. So I think in that situation, you need to find guys that contribute to a team winning. And it doesn't have to look good. It doesn't have to look sexy, but you just need to start putting up W's and bringing guys in with compete levels. I think that's it. The GM needs to find players that push guys to make them think, hey, I don't want to lose my roster spot. Let's look at the Leafs situation when they brought in Kyle Clifford last week. So the Leafs have one fighting major all year, Broeky. They bring in Clifford last week. I think it was last Thursday against Nashville. That night, Nick Ritchie and Wayne Simmons get in a fight. Why do you think that happens? Because they think, oh, shit. They bring this guy in. He's kind of coming for my roster spot. He's the guy that wants to fill that type of role. I've got 3 or 4 points this year and no fights. So what do? I go out there. I'm physical. Richie fights. Simmons tries to fight Borowiecki. I know he kind of poked him in the eye and that fight didn't happen. But it brings the compete level out of guys. When guys are scared to lose their job, let's be serious here. They want to keep those jobs in the NHL, kind of like a Matt Murray. I bet you think now Matt Murray doesn't give a fuck if he's making $6.25 million a year. He'd rather be making league minimum and be in the NHL. That's how much guys want to be there. And if you threaten that, I think that's a big motivator for them.
Yeah, I think to go with your point, I think Tyler Ennis, I don't know how many forwards there is. What did you say, 320?
360, yeah.
Okay, 360. I think he fits with inside the 360. The
Yeah.
difference is you have how many teams are at the bottom.
But
so
so
I think
what I want to say, he doesn't fit in on the
inside
fourth.
the 250.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Probably not. But
He doesn't fit on the
Ottawa has too many forwards from 250 to 350.
Yeah.
That's the problem right now.
Would a Stanley Cup team carry Tyler Ennis? No, he wouldn't. I don't think he's good enough playing a Stanley Cup team's fourth line, right? So if he's not going to take you towards that path, why do you have him? I think you got to groom someone who can help you, even if they don't have the skill of Tyler Ennis right now. You got to bring them along and make them contribute.
The issue isn't Tyler Ennis.
I know that
Tyler Ennis is easily their top 8 or 9 forwards.
Mm-hmm.
They have guys even worse. That's what I'm saying. They got way worse players. So the GM's got to take care of this, and he's not. You know, and I realize they're going to have some guys coming up, and that's what they're thinking. You know, they're going to have Greg and some other guys come up hopefully in the next couple of years. But you still have to fill some better roster spots. I know they tried last year with Dadenoff and it failed, but I mean, try again. Let's do something. The Matt Murray situation, honestly, I don't think Matt Murray has been as bad as they're saying. I think he's had a little bit of a rough go. I think he got injured. You know, that hurt. Then he comes back. Then he gets COVID. The game I was at, he was phenomenal. I thought he played awesome. He got scored on with 5 minutes left, and he got hit in the head at the same time. Or right after, like a second after, and that took him out of the game. He was awesome that game. So, and then he got COVID, and I think when he got after COVID, he only played 1, maybe 2 games, and then they sent him down. And then I heard, you know, Pierre Dorian didn't even talk to him after he was sent down, which we still have to figure out whether that's true or not. But if that is true, that to me is a joke. You don't have six.
We'll get to the bottom of that, Broeky. We'll be in Belleville next week, and we'll ask Matt Murray that question. How about that?
There we go. Yeah, I want to see that. So $6.25 million, and you're sending a guy down, and you don't tell him, or you haven't had a conversation with him, whether that's what Ian Mendez reported. I find that kind of find it hard to believe, but I'm like, if that's true, that's telling me you're a terrible GM.
I think so too. And to the point that this deal just happened last year. So if you're a guy, like let's say a big free agent comes on the market and you're thinking, hey, I'm going to sign with the Ottawa Senators. Well, you think, oh, fuck. Just last year, they signed a guy to a 4-year deal worth $25 million, and they sent him down within 16, 18 months. Why do I want to sign here again when that can happen? I don't even have a conversation with the GM. So I think that hurts Ottawa's position in getting players in the future. I mean, if the GM's not going to talk to them, and, you know, I know a roster spot's never guaranteed, but I mean, when you're paying a guy $25 million, I think they got a little longer leash, or they hope to have a little bit longer leash than your guy making league minimum going up or down, right? So I really do think that'll hurt the Senators' chances of signing free agents and restricting free agents moving forward, because it was a low blow. It's not a way to treat a guy, and, you know, at least have the conversation with him, I think.
I 100% agree, but there also has been rumblings of his work ethic over the team and everything else, and maybe because he's already young and he's already won a couple Stanley Cups, and you know what? Maybe he just isn't putting enough into it, and the coaches are seeing it. They're seeing what we're not, so we have to give that to the benefit of the doubt. So my question is, I'm not blaming this all on Murray, but I'm also not giving him a pass, because there's obviously something, and I think there's more to the story. So I think maybe Pierre and DJ are trying to cover their ass without question and trying to do something, but also there's got to be more to the story than just Murray's play, whether it's whatever he's doing behind the scenes, whether he's partying too much, or he's not taking care of his body, or there's something. Or he's just not trying hard enough, and he's getting outworked every day by Gus and Forsberg. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's frustrating. There's got to be more to the story. Anyways, we'll see what happens, because apparently he could be there a while in Belleville. So check out your Belleville Senators. They've actually been doing really, really well lately. So go out, support them, and you might even see an NHL goalie, 2-time Stanley Cup champion in net.
For sure. That'd be a great thing for the community too here, Broeky. So is there anything else you want to talk about? I know we got our guest.
Brad Marchand.
Okay.
Brad Marchand suspended for 3 games for a slew foot. I agree with the suspension. I agree. I like the 3 games. He's a repeat offender as far as some minor suspensions like this. If you watch his leg, I don't have the video clip, but anybody can pull it up on YouTube. His leg really extends, doesn't stay on the ice. That's a slew foot, and that is the most dangerous spot. Who was it again? I forget who he hit. But anyways, he went really hard in the boards. He could have broken his leg.
Ekman Larson.
Ekman Larson. Maybe that doesn't happen, but there's a chance of that, right? I like Brad Marchand. I think he's one of the best players in the game. I think he should be on Team Canada. I hate those plays. I really do. I think, you know, guys playing the edge, I get it. But when it comes to slew foots, PK Subban's bad at that too. And then there's other guys. That to me is like smoking guys from behind. It doesn't belong in the game.
I've never had a worse thing happen to me than being slew foot. Like you don't realize how bad it is until it physically happens to you. Like I would rather get punched in the face than get slew footed, because your body's not ready for it. And just the way you fall when you're not prepared. Like, man, when I've got slew foot a couple times, and I was sore for weeks after, not just in one spot, like literally everywhere. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine, like, it's just a dirty play. They got to get out of the game. And I think it was a good suspension. And, you know, Marchand's kind of like Lemieux. He's got that history. So you tack on a few extra games, right?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, even if it was more than 3, I mean, I think 3 is an okay number. It could have been more than 3. It's going to take a look at my notes to see before your buddy comes on. Evander Kane, you want to get into that quickly while you're?
Yeah, but so last topic here.
Okay, so Evander Kane, it's funny, you know, years ago with Winnipeg, He was in Vegas, I believe, before Vegas had a team, but partying in Vegas and with stacks of cash, just pretending their phones. And obviously since then he's gone into bankruptcy. He has a crazy wife, which from everything I read, she is. I think he has custody of his daughter right now. And the judge actually said she had to go to some sort of physical mental training or something along those lines is what I've read the last couple of days. So it's interesting to see that what's going on with his life. I really do hope that he turns it around. I know most people are so negative and hate people. I'm not like that. I like to give people second chances. But at the end of the day, I do think he's deserved everything he's gotten. He deserves to play. He's got tons of talent to play. You talk about the top 350, 250. He could be top 100 in the NHL if he's on his game. He doesn't get his head out of his ass. But right now, he doesn't belong there. And no teams want to take a shot at him because of his head case. So he's got to prove everybody. And hopefully stick with him.
It's exactly like it's like the Joshua Hosang thing. Joshua Hosang coming out of junior, that guy could have been the first overall pick in the OHL draft. Could have been he was a high pick in the NHL draft. Could have went top 5 in the NHL draft, but people knew he was a head case and they thought he was going to burn bridges, and he has, right? So now he's actually with the Marlies and he's really turning it around. He could be a guy that's worth a flyer later on in the year to come up and provide some offense. Maybe not even for the Leafs, but for any team. So Evander Kane's in that same situation, right? I mean, it just, you burn so many bridges that people don't want to give you a second chance. And when it gets to that point is you have to be a difference maker too. Like if you have that reputation where you're going to be a problem in the room and a problem with guys, people don't want you to be a second line, a second line forward between the second and third line now. You need to be a first line forward, right? So is Evander Kane at that point anymore? I don't know. And I don't know if another team's going to take the shot at him anymore. It depends on his cap hit. He's got a $7 million cap hit, Broeky. If the Sharks are willing to eat some money, I could see a team taking a shot at him. He'll probably end up in fucking Arizona, and they'll just put him on like LTIR for the rest of his life and just bring his cap hit up. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but he's going to have to prove himself. He's gone down the AHL, so we'll see how that plays out. Best of luck to Evander Kane. And just a lesson for the kids, you can be the most talented player in the world, but you got to have your shit together. If you're an asshole, people are going to smell it, and you only get so many chances, and he might have run out.
And that's part of the reason I back to the suits. Wear a suit to the game, kids. Don't listen to Matthews. Look sharp. Scouts are going to see it. When you go to the OHL, you walk in there with a suit, or you walk in there like you're going to a barbecue. I'm telling you right now, the scouts are going to notice that. And that's part of it. And I know that's just a little thing, but they're going to notice your mannerisms on the ice. They're going to notice how you are with your teammates, or you do everything alone, all that stuff. And I play with guys that are like that, and they end up going nowhere. So you want to be a team player. And I remember back in the day when Bufflin was an awesome team player. They loved him. He hated Kane. Well, there's something that happened there. Kane thought he was too big of the man. And look what's happened, right? Karma bites you in the ass. You can only be so cocky, and then karma bites you. That's what happens, right? So.
Yeah. Well said, Broeky here. So I think we're going to transition into our guest here, guys. So we are bringing on a man from Cobourg, Ontario. His name's Todd Denault. He is a best-selling author. He's wrote 4 books. Let me just get the list out here. So he's wrote Wayne Gretzky's Unbreakable, 50 in 39 games, the greatest game of all time. He wrote an autobiography about Jacques Plot, the man who changed the face of hockey, and A Season in Time with the 1993 Montreal Canadiens. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's give a welcome to the Battle of Ontario Hockey podcast to our next guest, Todd Denault. All right, guys, we'd like to welcome on our next guest, the Battle of Ontario Hockey podcast. This man is a historian of sports in our community. He is the author of 4 best-selling books and recently wrote a piece for the Hockey Hall of Fame's Legend Program, a diehard Montreal Canadiens fan. He is on the board of directors of the Cobourg Sports Hall of Fame. From Cobourg, Ontario, we'd like to welcome on Todd Denault. Todd, how's it going, buddy? Nice to see you.
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. So Todd, some big news. So you are, I guess we'll talk about the Montreal Canadiens first here, because that's what we were kind of going to cover. So big news in Montreal. Bergevin's out. What are your thoughts? We brought in Jeff Gordon. What are your thoughts on the situation, and what do you see playing out in Montreal here?
Well, I mean, it's tough because they were in the finals. It only seems like, it was 5 months ago?
Yeah.
But a lot has obviously changed since then. I think part of the problem with the one knock on the past administration was their lack or their inability to seemingly draft successful first-round picks over an extended period of time. And in today's NHL, especially with the cap, if you whiff on your first-round picks, it's tough. You're behind the eight ball. A lot of that was masked by, on the other side, the GM Bergevin was really quite good at making trades, scouting other teams' talent, and we did really well on trades. But again, without that young, draft base, and then of course all the stuff that happened after the season. I mean, obviously you have Price isn't played, Weber hasn't played, the controversy surrounding the NHL draft with their first round pick, plus the slow start. Bergevin's in the last year of his contract. It's almost like a perfect storm. As a fan, I'm pretty impressed as to who the hire was for the president part, or the executive vice president, or whatever title. He's a good hockey guy. I think most people in the NHL and around it would tell you he was probably the best, or the best qualified executive that did not have a current job. He was going to be hired by somebody at some point. So I like that. People I know, especially people in this neck of the woods, are always puzzled by the whole thing of, well, the GM has to be bilingual. Anybody who's lived or been around that market down there, where the media the media stuff every day, and 2/3 of the questions are, in French, you have to have somebody who's the face of the team publicly, whose ability is to be bilingual and good at it. So, I mean, you're going to look for a hockey person, of course, but if you're just a pure English spokesperson day after day after day, I mean, your market is 2/3, if not 3/4 French people. I mean, you have to speak their language. That's part of the deal. It's part of the tradition. It would be almost the equivalent down here of the Leafs. I know it sounds bad, but it'd be like the Leafs going, okay, we're going to hire a GM who has trouble speaking English.
Yeah.
That would never happen. The media would be like, what? We can't. It's the same thing. So it's an easy bugaboo to pick on. But I do think by having Gorton as the president, and I mean, all the teams now are going to that format. The Leafs with Shanahan as president, Dubas as GM, even the Blue Jays, Shapiro's the president, Russ Atkins is the GM. They're all going to this model where the president is kind of the overseer and the GM is one component in the whole thing. So, I mean, kudos to Montreal for following that. It's never a good idea to usually have one person with their hands at the wheel. But yeah, so the GM will be interesting to see when they name. And then, of course, once you pick the GM, how safe is the current coach in Montreal? He's not their guy. It's going to be interesting. I mean, again, it's probably for Montreal a lost year. Needless to say, people will go, well, geez, are you really a Montreal fan? Well, here.
Watching the game.
Right. So even with the season it's been, I've got the package and I'm watching the game.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing that I see. It's a lost year for them. Maybe it results in a high draft pick, hopefully. And hopefully this time they actually, find success with the high draft pick. It would certainly be a change of pace from what's been happening in the recent past.
Yeah, they've had some big swing and misses, right? Like, I think they drafted Kotkaniemi instead of Brady Tkachuk that year, third overall, right? So that's a little swing. I know Broeky's
play for them anymore.
Broeky's right? The biggest Brady Tkachuk fan in the world. So,
I'm not the biggest Brady Tkachuk fan, but I mean, that's a perfect situation where he doesn't even play for them anymore. He was pretty much given away. I mean, we all know the story, what happened there. One thing I do want to ask is you talked about first round picks, and I've heard this from other Montreal Canadiens fans. What's your thought on picking small? It seems like they went and picked small guys, maybe not just in the first round, but in later rounds as well. Do you think that's Bergevin, or do you think that's too much of the culture and that needs to change as well?
I think sometimes it's a level of cockiness too. Like, I mean, I think when you're picking in the first round, like we've seen every now we see the charts and everybody's got their charts and the scouting bureau and all this, right? The first round should really be about who's the best player available.
Yeah.
Right. And you see a lot of teams do that. Like, like, for example, you mentioned Ottawa with Tkachuk. They just went, hey, he's the best guy on the board.
Yep.
Right. That's how they picked him. Whereas Kotkaniemi, we're going to reach because we think he can be a center and we're looking for a center and we need a center. And so we're going to reach for that. I mean, people go on with the Kotkaniemi pick. I mean, I'm old enough to go with Bergevin, Louis LeBlanc. was a first-round pick. There's guys even worse than they're just guys who never even made any sort of impact. I mean, Galchenyuk was a first-round pick for us for
and he's played on 17 teams in the last 5 years. Like
exactly. So there's been real misses in these first-round guys, or when they do hit one, Sergachev, trade him away. Right? Like that's the other thing is this trading away of young players.
Ryan McDonough,
Sergachev. Like you just can't trade these guys away. Mm-hmm. Young guys are going to struggle. That goes without saying. But it's like, oh, well, he's 21. We're dumping him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, as I said, and now with the way the league's going, like even in Jersey there, I saw where Jack Hughes yesterday, his third year is coming up, and he would be going as a bridge contract normally or a restricted. Geez, he signed an 8-year extension already for like
crazy.
$8 million a season. That's where this is heading. Like the money's all in the young guys, and then you're hoping that it works. And if it doesn't, maybe you're stuck with it. Maybe you can trade them. But
I think that's a flawed philosophy too. Because if you look at all the teams that do well, like you said, it is the teams that draft guys in the first round and have good players, but they come in and they're cost controlled and they're on their entry level deals, right? So I think the more value you can squeeze into those guys going beyond year 3 when their entry level runs out, you got to get them at a good price year 4 and 5. I think those are your years to kind of capitalize and make a serious run at some legitimate players kind of thing. So it is weird how the league's trending that way. Like I thought the Jack Hughes thing was really crazy. Like I don't see why they couldn't have signed him for, 4 years at $5 million and just bridged it and see where you are in 4 years. It doesn't really make sense to me that
Toronto did it with how many players as well, right? Ottawa just had to do it with Brady Tkachuk, Batherson. I mean, it's all the teams are having to do it because, it's a trend, right?
Well, and you guys know, like Ottawa, and again, no offense, but Ottawa's almost tight to the cap.
Exactly.
And they haven't been in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like to me, that's the old school part of me going, if you're tight to the cap and you're not a playoff team,
you're not doing
something here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're not doing it right. But there's a lot of teams that are tight to the cap. They can't even like Toronto's had times where they can't even call up a guy because they're so tight to the cap. There's no room, right?
Yeah.
Was it they had to dress one short defenseman or something? Vegas is the same way. Vegas last year a couple times, I think they had to dress one or two guys short just because they couldn't bring anybody up because of the cap situation. So I mean, it's definitely a struggle for teams, but they think, hey, this is how we're gonna win in the long run by signing these guys. If we don't, someone else will, right?
Right. The problem is by rewarding these guys with contracts before they actually do anything.
Yeah, that's the struggle.
It's tough because now you're overpaying for something in the hope. On the flip side, you had what ended up happening in Chicago, where by the time they paid Taves and Kane all the money, it was for past performance. Duncan Keith for past performance.
Yeah. That used to be the old trend, right? Where guys got paid kind of later on in their contract. They were a Stanley Cup champion and they'd make their $10 million. And it's like your prime's kind of, behind you, where you need to find good teams, find it in the middle, right? Or they don't sign guys to massive deals. Like look at the Boston Bruins. They're probably one of the best in the league when it comes to contracts. You see what Pasternak and Marchand and those guys are making. And that's why they can be good at it. Yeah.
Nobody makes more than that.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's definitely interesting. I want to kind of get into some of your books, though. Sure. Obviously, you're a 4-time bestseller. So what inspired you to write these books? Is it just living life through hockey, and what inspired you, I guess, to get into hockey at a young age and to watch it all your life and be a Montreal fan?
Well, wow, there's a lot in that question. The hockey part, I mean, I can't remember not being a hockey fan, right? I think part of it, and this is going to sound certainly familiar to a lot of people, is your father. That's who you watched the games with when you were a kid, sitting down with dad and watching hockey. And, naturally, because he's your father, you tend to, his favorite team becomes your favorite team, just like my grandfather's favorite team was his team, and then it's my team, and it's your dad, and then you get involved in it. And then there comes a point where you move on a bit and you get a little bit older, because then everybody finds their own team, if you know what I mean. And for me, with Montreal, it was just I was born in '74, so the late '70s stuff I watched it, but it's not like there. But really, it was in the early mid '80s, maybe '84. I can remember the Battle of Quebec was the big thing back then, and that's when I really got into Montreal. Like, it's funny, somebody once wrote that the team that you loved when you were like 12 is your team like for life. I mean, I can still name you pretty much the entire 1985, 86, 87 Montreal roster. The current one I have trouble with. You know, like there's some guys that you go, I can name the one when we were kids. I mean, I can name all the divisions when we were kids, you know, the Adams, the Smythe, the Norris, the Patrick, and who was where. Now, if you said to me, what division are the Coyotes in? Well, a West, I guess. I mean, I don't forget.
Nobody knows about the Coyotes, though. That's Fleming's favorite team.
Get out of here.
You know,
He hates the Coyotes, so I laughed at that you named that one.
I'm old school. I mean, I missed the 21-team league. That I could follow. This is too many.
Yeah.
So anyways, you grow up with that, and then once you have your favorite team, the worst thing, like again, my dad was big on this. Once you pick your team, that's your team. The worst thing is the guy who jumps the bandwagon of going, hey, well, this year, you know, so-and-so has a good team. I'm cheering for them. There's nothing worse even now than when I see some guy going, well, my team's not in the playoffs, so I'm cheering for this team to win the cup. No. You go down with the ship. You know, you cheer for the logo. You learn as you get older, you're cheering for the logo on the front, not the names on the back.
Well said. Yeah, sure.
So you're gonna have good years. You're gonna have bad years. It's just part of the deal. Yeah. So the other thing when I was a kid is I always loved reading, and anybody who's ever written books will tell you that unless you are a person who's read a lot of books, you're not writing books, because that's where it comes in, is the reading part. Love reading this, can't get enough of this. And then what ends up happening at a certain point is you go to yourself, geez, one day, you know, it'd be so cool if I could have a book like on the shelf, right? Like, so when you went to the library, there was your book along with, you know, Brian McFarlane's book, or, you know, Stan Fischler's book, or, you know, whoever, you know, Stephen Brunt, or all these people, right? If I could have a book, and that's kind of the dream. And then the second part of it is, well, finding that topic that, number one, you're able to do, but number two, that hasn't been done before. Like, even now, having done all these books, I get people who come up to me like every couple of days, they've got an idea for a book. So they'll go, listen, you know, you should do a book on Gordie Howe. And I'll go, okay, well, there's only about 20 some odd of them, including about 4 that Gordie did himself. What should I write about him? It's been done. Certain things have been done. You don't need to, like, you know, so it's finding something that hasn't been done, or an angle on something that hasn't been done. And what happened is, with Jacques Plante, I was watching the game like I am tonight, and it was the anniversary of when he put on the mask, and the first intermission had a segment on him, and it had the mask in there. And I went, geez, you know, I'd like to read a book about him. I'd like to learn more about him. And then you find out that there really isn't a book on him. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off of like, wow, there isn't a book on him. And that's kind of tough. There's been a lot of books on a lot of guys. And I just consider it lucky that I'm like going, okay, there hasn't been a book on him. Then you have to go and do the work, and you have to explore it, because I'm a nobody at that point, right? I'm a nothing. It's Jacques Plante that's going to sell the book, not me. And the only question the book company is going to have is, can this guy do the Jacques Plante book?
So how old were you when you decided to start writing this book?
Oh, wow. It was a while. So that I would have been, I don't know, early 30s.
Early 30s? Okay, yeah.
Early 30s, maybe.
There's still hope for you, Broeky. Maybe you can learn how to read finally, and you can start writing.
I think this has to teach me how to read, and then I can write a book.
Early 30s, yeah.
Broeky couldn't spell book if you spot him the B and the K and told him to buy a vowel. So
Yeah, so
don't listen. Here's
got
the first thing: don't ever listen to a Leafs fan.
He's got
They win the Stanley Cup every fall, not the spring fall. Just ask them.
Well, I watched the parade last night firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. They've already won it this year.
Yeah. So no, it's just they have the idea, and then you get lucky, and somebody said, "Hey, yeah," and then you do the book, and you get lucky in that people like it, and people enjoyed it, and then you get another, and one after that, and people really like it, and people look forward to them, and then you're like, okay, wow, this is cool. I mean, it's changed a lot. It's been now 12 years since the Plante book came out. So the book industry's changed a lot, as has everything in life.
Yeah.
Money and the business and all that's a lot different. If I were to do the book today, it would be different than when I did it back then. But such is life. I'm happy that I got it done. I'm happy that I've got 4 done. I'm currently working on a 5th one, but that's been more of a stop and start with COVID and other stuff. It's one of these things with these books where you have to do research, and unfortunately with a lot of things being closed, I kind of have to wait it out. But hey, there's no rush. It'll be one thing you learn when you do books is you only have one shot to do it. Once you hit the send button on the computer, it goes from being yours to everybody else's.
Yeah.
And the worst fear that you have as a person who writes books is you finish the book's out, and somebody goes, "Hey, you missed this.
Yeah.
This was a big thing. Like, you missed this." And it's like, because you can't go back and change it. It's done.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And you're always going to miss something. There's always going to be something that might come up later,
Always.
right? Like, there's no way you're going to, not about remember, but sometimes you're learning. You might learn something that happened 5 years after you wrote the book and go, oh, that would have been cool to add in. And that's why a lot of times there could be, second issues or something, maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, if there's enough stories to write about it, right? But I do have a question regarding kind of what you talked about, because I would assume Fleming is the same situation as me. I don't know a lot about the book industry. So do you have to get like a contract with a company that before the book gets released, kind of, or before you even write it? I mean,
so
like
for
how
the
does
first,
that go along?
so for the first book, I had to basically go and find an agent.
Okay.
Because a lot of the book companies back then, it's a little bit different now, but a lot of them back then, if you didn't have an agent, they wouldn't even look at you.
Okay.
Like, they get so many things submitted to them that if you just sent yours in blind, chances are it would go in a box in a corner, just thrown there. They get a ton of submissions, right? So when I was doing the book, I'll never forget this. When I was doing the book, the Twilight books were popular. Like the kid vampire thing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
The girls love those.
I would go to the book company office, and the mail would come in every day, and the guy would just drop off all these friggin' manuscripts, unsolicited, where people had just sent them to them. And literally 9 out of 10 were blatant copies of the Twilight books.
Yeah.
Because it was people going, hey, those are successful, number one. And number two, well, I can do it way better than they can. So whatever the trend, and all of those went into a corner. And if somebody was industrious on a Friday, they may take a couple home with them to look at. But whereas with the agent has a relationship already with the book company. He's pumping out a book, say, for this author. So while he's in that meeting, he goes, hey, I've got this other author. Why don't you take a look at this? And the agent would help you craft a book proposal and all this. And the book company would go, okay, it must be decent because the guy's got an agent that's known to sign on for him. That was kind of their quality control back then. And then once you get in the door and you have a couple books under your belt, then you're known, because then you have a bio, right?
Oh,
so,
for sure. Yeah.
So like, for example, to use the analogy, like with the hockey stuff, when Austin Matthews is, say, not an NHL player, or before he's even a pro, when he's first getting attention, he needs an agent to kind of help him through the process, right? I'm sure now at this point in his career, he still has an agent, but does he need him as much? He basically has him look over contracts, but he's living his life, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. So you need that to get in the door. Now, having done 4 books, you don't have the questions that you have before, where they're like, well, can he write? Can he do this? You have a track record. It's like a job, right? So, after you've been with the company for 5 or 10 years, they're like, okay, he knows what he's doing. We'll give him more responsibility, right?
Yeah. No,
So
for
you're
sure.
you're off your entry level deal now. That's what it is, right? Off your entry level, you've bridged, and
Now you're making $8 million a year.
A little bit short of that. A little short of that.
I got one here, Broeky. So Todd, I've got this is what I love about books, and I've heard you say this before, and that I love books for the reason is that stories can be passed on through books, and just if someone passes away or someone's no longer with us, their stories are only really told by us, keeping track of them, documenting through history and books. So I know you've interviewed a lot of guys for your books. Can you give me some maybe one of the funniest stories or one of the most memorable stories from someone you've interviewed that's passed away, so we can kind of keep their story going?
Wow, I actually giving a good story for somebody who's still alive first.
Well, that's good.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I did my third book was on the 92-93 NHL season, which was the last year. That was the year that Montreal was the last Canadian team to win the Cup. And it was also the year that the Leafs had their famous playoff with Gretzky and the Kings. So anyways, I was interviewing Denis Savard, who that year had played for Montreal. And he was telling me a story of Montreal was preparing for the finals against the Kings. Now, Denis Savard had been in the league for 13, 14 years at this point. So he hadn't won the Cup yet. So he's to the finals. And of course, in his mind, and when you talk to players, this is a recurring theme. Geez, I may not ever get back here again. Like, this is my chance to win the Cup. And this had been maybe the third time or fourth time Denny had been. He'd been to the semifinals before, but never the final. And every time he'd made it to the semis with the Blackhawks in the 80s, he lost to Gretzky and the Oilers. So he gets to the finals, and here's Gretzky again with the Kings, and Denny's like, oh, my God, him again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that stage of their careers, Denny would get a ride every morning into practice and all that with Patrick Waugh. So Patrick would pick him up, and the two of them would drive together to practice. So they're sitting there one day, and Denny goes, Patrick never really talked that much, so I'm a bit of a chatterbox. So they're driving in, and Denny's just freaking out. He's going, Patrick, this could be my last shot, and, I get to the final, and, it's Gretzky again, and, he's already won 4, and all I want is 1, and blah, 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 and he's just panicking, and he goes, Patrick doesn't say a word. And then Denny goes, I took a breath, and Patrick says, no worry, Denny, no worries. A team with Kelly Rudy in goal is never going to beat a team with Patrick Waugh in goal in the Stanley Cup final. And, it's funny. You have these things when you're doing these interviews with people where you can't even barely conceal the glee because you're like, perfect. I know when people read that, they're going to have the same reaction I do of like, oh, that's gold.
Yeah, that's Patrick Waugh to a T too, right? Like
exactly. I don't even have to write it. I just have it. I have it. Like, I don't even have to like make it up or nothing. I just put it down on the paper and I've got it. It tells all about Patrick. Yeah. It tells about Denis Savard and his attitude without me even doing a thing to it. I don't have to touch that. As a writer, that's perfect. I don't have to touch it.
Yeah. Awesome. That's hilarious.
I actually love that story. I'm gonna tweet that to Kelly Rudy.
To go on with Patrick Waugh, there's rumors that he could be the GM in Montreal. Do you think that'll happen or no?
I don't think it'll happen. I'll be honest with you on that.
Wouldn't it be great if it did, though?
I spoke to Patrick for that book, and the one thing with Patrick is Patrick is one of the most confident people I've ever talked to.
Yeah.
And when you're a goalie's a unique position in hockey. I mean, you're on the team, yes, but you're kind of apart from the team. Like, because what you do is so different than the opposite of what everybody else on the team does, right? Yeah. So a goalie can be his own character, his own unique thing, and still succeed. Patrick is one of those guys that if he's coming in, he's going to have full control. He's going to be the coach. He's going to be the GM. He's going to make every decision because that's how Patrick is. Mm-hmm. Patrick's going to be the guy in control. And already with them having Jeff Gordon as the president, I just don't see Patrick fitting in there. Maybe I'm wrong, but he just, Gordon's going to have the big say, and I don't know that Patrick is going to be happy with anything less than having full say. Yeah. So there's a lot of egos involved there. And so I mean, Patrick's always been kind of the candidate, but if he came into Montreal, it'd be like he's running the full show. And after what happened with the previous group, I'm not sure that the owner is too eager for them to have somebody come in to run the whole show. I don't know how many guys in the NHL today run the whole show, really. It's become such a big job. To be coach, GM, everything. I mean, that's a pretty huge task.
I don't think there's anybody in the league anymore that's coach and GM, is there? Flem, do you know?
No, that's coach and GM. No,
I don't think there's anybody. But
whereas you used to have that pretty frequently.
Had that a few years ago. Maybe it was 10 years ago. It might have been
Lou Lamoriello did that all the time in New Jersey. Coach, GM, president.
There you go. There's an example right there too. Yeah. So now it's coach, GM. Well, there's about 5 coaches, or more with the video coaches, and then GM, and now president, and then owner. So it's a lot more jobs, but a lot more things to do. Different signings, cap. The cap world is different than it was 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago, you'd sign whatever, and now it's so tough, and all these analytics guys too. That's another part of it, which wasn't really a thing 10 years ago, right? So, but definitely interesting on the Patrick take. I agree with you there. I think he's definitely somebody that wants full control, and I think they're going to get somebody. I don't want to say somebody that's a puppet, but somebody that's not going to be able to and knows that they don't have full say, right? And that what's going to happen.
Like if they brought in, like, for example, just because I follow Montreal and I know the market, if they brought in, say, a guy played for Montreal a few years ago, if they brought in Matthew Darche, he was a player for Montreal, kind of a fourth-line guy. People liked him, but he's been the director of player development for Tampa Bay for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That makes sense. His resume says, okay, he's been with the team that's won the last 2 cups, and he's not going to cause friction. He'll probably work well in a team environment. There's guys like that out there. So that's where I think it's tough for Patrick. Patrick's the name because he's Patrick Waugh. And he's the big splash. But there's a lot of guys who are, if you start looking around, what's his face guy for San Jose, Madden, he's been their scout guy for years. And San Jose, all they do every year is just win all these games. I mean, there's guys out there who've got resumes built up beyond what they did as a player. Yeah. No disrespect to Patrick, but there's guys out there, and I think they're going to cast a wide net to find the guy.
You know what I take on the Patrick Waugh situation too is I think that you kind of had Patrick Waugh in Bergevin, like 2 emotional guys that when Bergevin got something in his head, he was going to do it. If he had Molson's approval, he was going to do it, right? Like it's kind of like the PK for Weber deal. Like there probably wasn't a lot of guys that supported that at the time, but in his heart, he knew that was the best deal. And he pulled the trigger, and he wouldn't let anyone tell him otherwise. And I think that's kind of a similar spot you'd end up with Patrick Waugh in that, if he gets in his head that this is what he's going to do, I don't think he really cares what anyone else thinks. And I think he's shown that too. And I'm pretty sure he said it multiple times. So,
yeah.
And Bergevin is, again, having spoken to Bergevin a few times, he's another guy, very confident guy, like really confident. And guys really like him. His thing was he was very honest with his players. And guys really appreciated that. And he's not afraid to take chances and gambles. And sometimes they worked. And then unfortunately, sometimes when you do that, they don't. You're right about the Subban for Weber deal. At the time, he got literally, people were outraged by that trade.
Yeah.
But if you look back on it, they got a guy who was totally 100% character guy for a guy who, I like PK, but PK has a bit of that circus thing around him. And even I'm surprised with how PK's play has kind of fallen off the map in the last couple years. And now here he is. He's on that last year of his deal in Jersey where he's making, it's ridiculous. It's 9-something million. It's the last year of his deal. He's going to have to get ready for a pay cut next year.
Oh, half. Would you think half?
At least.
Is anybody even going to sign him that? I don't even know if I wouldn't sign him for $5 million.
Yeah, like he might get a 1-year deal for like 4, maybe. It's tough.
Maybe
he's going to get a prove-it deal for sure, unless New Jersey makes a run and he's a contributor in the playoffs. He's going to get a show-me deal, a 1 year, $4 million kind of thing, and have to build his value back up, right?
Yeah.
For sure. So I think in the long run, that deal kind of worked out with what happened last year, and Shea Weber being such a rock back there and the leader for that offensive core. Obviously, he had Carey Price, but if PK is in that situation, do they go as far? I don't know. I mean, you can easily say they do, they don't, but I mean, obviously, it somewhat worked out, I guess. But although Weber did have some injuries and stuff like that.
When you watch Weber night after night, and you saw it, you appreciated it. Just so solid, like, and no mistakes in his own end, no foolishness.
No flash. Like PK was flash, right? People
tough,
like that, but
tough, aggressive, right place, right time, timely slap shot goal here and there. Like, just gave you and no flash. All about team. And the guy in behind the scenes that if a guy was out of line, he's the guy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I got another question for you. So obviously you interview a lot of guys for these books. Give us maybe one of your most interesting guys you've interviewed that seemed to come across, whether it was good or bad, that might have had a story,
So many guys. Most of the guys, to be honest with you, most of the guys are really good. The key to it is getting almost the lesser guys. The lesser guys are the best because they can go on forever, right? I mean, when I was doing that 93 book, I made a point. I talked to 22 guys on the Kings that year, coach, trainers, assistant coach, players. Talked to about 20 guys on Montreal that year, 15 guys off the Leafs. Like, the more you talk to guys, you're going to get some interesting stuff. And sometimes it's usually from the lesser guys, right? So the best part of that is when you get the lesser guys, it's easier to get the bigger names. So you can sit there and go, okay, people go, oh, well, you got Gretzky. Well, okay. I mean, I had to talk to 20 guys on that Kings team first, put that in my message to his agent, along with the fact that I've done these 2 books, and then realized that his agent also had Grant Fuhr and Brett Hull. So I thought, well, he probably gets Wayne Gretzky requests all the time. I'll ask for Grant Fuhr. So I do the interview with Fuhr, and then I go, hey, would I be able to get Brett Hull? I do the interview with Brett Hull. So after that, and with all that, it's like, then I'm like able to go, okay, what about Gretzky? And he's like, okay, well, you might hear some the next couple days. So I was sitting here, and it was like maybe I don't want to say maybe a Wednesday or a Thursday afternoon. Phone rang, came up unknown number. So this is back. I was giving out, instead of giving this out, which can be a pain if you're trying to do an interview, I had it all set up with tape recording on the main landline. So phone rings, unknown name, pick up the phone. Hello, may I please speak to Todd? And as soon as you hear the voice,
that's pretty cool. I like that.
Like, it's, you grew up with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was such a huge part of you that you know the voice. And there's that split second where you go, holy jeez, Wayne Gretzky's
the great one. The great one.
And you have to literally just quick, because you don't want to come off sounding like Joe Fan. You're a professional, you're a published author. And so I started talking to him. And I'll never forget, he was at a ballpark. His son was playing ball. And he said, I got about 15 minutes. Let's go. Right? Because you have to be prepared for this. Like, you have to know, because that could happen where he phones you and you're like, well, I don't have my questions prepared. Well, that's your one shot. Yeah. These guys don't have to do this. They've got tons of requests and tons of time. They're not getting any money from it. They're only doing it because, hey, this sounds like it's kind of cool, and it's not a book all about me, so you're not going to ask me personal questions, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. So I'll never forget, I was on the landline, and about maybe a few minutes into the call, my brother comes in, and my brother is 2 years younger than me, and my brother was like the huge Gretzky-aholic. Like, he was everything Gretzky when we were kids. He had the doll, he ate the cereal, the Pro Star cereal, collected everything. So I'm doing the interview, and my brother starts looking at me funny. He's looking at me odd. And later on, he was like, as soon as I hung up the phone, he was like, that was who I thought it was? I'm like, yeah, that was 99. He goes, oh my God. Like, he starts flipping out. I do the 15-minute interview, and Gretzky, people always ask me all the time, well, what's Wayne really like? He's the most humble guy. If you're looking for him to come and brag about A, B, and C and what he does, it's not going to happen, right? He's going to be so humble and go, oh, well, this guy did this. And he'll go out of his way to praise other people on the team before praising himself, where you're going, no offense, Wayne, you're the one who got the hat trick in Game 7 against the Leafs. I mean, as great as, so-and-so played, I mean, come on, right? But he's very humble, but he tells you stuff, and he's very good with it. And it was a great interview. And then when I hung up with him, you're like to yourself, you're going, oh my God, I just spoke with Wayne Gretzky, right?
He called me.
He called me, and first reaction is, well, I'm heading right down to the bar with this, the local bar. I'm heading right down.
Yeah.
I walk into the bar, and of course, the guy behind the bar, somebody I've known my whole life. Family owns the bar. We've known each other since we were kids. And he's like, hey, what's up? I said, get a load of who just called me at home. And he goes, oh, God, which one? I said, 99. Well, everybody in the bar. Gretzky, tell us.
Yeah.
That's the coolest part about what you do, is the ability to talk to people that you never would have been able to talk to. Gretzky being obviously one of them. But there's so many other guys, and that's the real thrill of it, is getting to that point where, I talked to this guy or this guy. And it's funny, different generations. So for that younger group, the Gretzky thing was like the big deal. I remember when I did the Jacques Plante book, Dave Keon phoned here. Well, geez, everybody in this town that was over the age of, say, 40 wanted to know all about Dave Keon. You talked to Dave Keon for an hour. You asked Dave Keon this. What about Dave Keon? It's the exact same as the Gretzky thing, but that's their guy from that period, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the cool part, is getting the chance just to talk to these guys. And you got to be prepared. You just can't wing it. You've got to know your stuff, because, they're taking their time out, and you have to kind of go, okay, and you've got to get something. You're the one writing the book. So, like, I got to get stuff for him to say, because if I don't, then it's useless. It's not in the book. Like, I've got to get stuff to put in there. So that's the cool thing, is when you get a guy, like I said earlier, to tell you a story that you maybe haven't heard, and you go, I don't even have to write that. That's perfect.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So at this point, when you talked to Gretzky, had you already wrote were you already in the middle of writing the Unbreakable book, 50 and 39, or did that come after your conversation?
That came after that.
Did that kind of have an influence on you writing that, just being able to speak to him?
That one came to me with the co-author, and he had the idea, and his idea was pretty simple in that, when you look at Gretzky, I mean, he retired, he had 61 different NHL records, and now he's been retired for over 20 years, and I think he's got 59 NHL records.
Yeah.
Like, I think one or two have gotten broken or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the more you delve into it, and there's a thing on Wikipedia where you Google it, Wayne Gretzky NHL records, and you start looking at it, and you go to yourself, this is ridiculous. Like, single season, goals, assists, points, him, right? Career, goals, assists, points, him. Playoff, goals, assists, points. Like, single season, career, like any possible combination, it's usually him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, holy, and my friend Mike Brophy's idea for the book was, people ask Gretzky, you've got 60 NHL records. What's your favorite? Like, what's the one that you think's never going to be broken? And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, are we going to see somebody get 215 points in a season? Not going to happen. Are we going to see somebody lead the league in scoring on his assists alone? Probably not going to happen. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, right? Even Ovechkin right now, they're going on about the goals record. I mean, it's there, but he's got to stay healthy and active and good for the next 4 years. I mean, it's not a slam dunk.
Oh, no.
Agreed.
Not at all. That's probably the only one that's really, really close. That could happen.
Yeah.
The rest are like, the points is not even close. The assist isn't like the goal one is probably the only major one that really has a shot, I think. And
Yeah,
like you say, he's got to stay healthy. He's doing really well. That guy's playing phenomenal this year. The best hockey he might have ever played. I think he's on pace for some crazy amount of points. But like you say, he's still got to do it. I mean, it's easy to stay on pace to do this. If I play 4 more years, but he's still going to do it.
Like Gretzky, like career-wise, has more assists than every other player has ever had points.
Yeah.
Like there's some of the things that you just, when you look at it, you kind of go, huh?
That's insane.
And so Mike's idea was, because people would always ask, well, what's the favorite record? What's the one record that's never going to be broke or whatever? And Gretzky admitted in a few interviews that his favorite record, or the one that he was, the 50 goals in 39 games, which you look at it and you go, in a league where now you might get 1 50-goal scorer a year, maybe 2, and that's over an 82-game schedule. Like 50 and 39 is pretty daunting. Remember a couple of years ago, Austin Matthews had 4 goals in his first game, and everybody went, "Oh my God, he's on pace."
Yeah.
Who said that? The Leaf fans, so they already have the cup. Hey, and they didn't even win that game, by the way.
Right. So the problem is with it too, and I tell this to people, like, so he scored 50 and 39. He actually had 40 goals in 37 games. He scored 5 in game 38 against the Kings and followed it up with another 5 the next game against Philly in game 39. Who's putting 10 goals in the net in back-to-back games anymore?
I didn't even know that stat. That's awesome.
That's a cool stat, eh, Broeky? Yeah, that's awesome.
Who scored 5 goals in a game? Like, I couldn't tell you last time.
Back-to-back.
Yeah.
And you're going, okay. I mean, and then so the more we dug into that, we went, you know what? You think about it, because the record for years had been 50 and 50, and he shattered that. And then you have some guys later on, like Brett Hull had one where it was 50 and 43 or something, or Mario was close, but nobody now in the new NHL. I mean, you haven't even had a 50-50 guy, I think, since maybe Cam Neely. Like, I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Just it's not, and you don't have, like, at that time period, you had a lot of the 10-8 games.
Yeah, there's
rarely that now. I mean, so you're more likely to see a 3-1, a 3-2. You just don't have those point nights, right? Like, I mean, Gretzky, I may be off on this by a bit, but I think Gretzky had, I think it was, what it ended up being, like 50 hat tricks in his career. Like even Ovechkin now has like 24.
Yeah.
Like 50. Like, it's just, so there's so many of them off there, but that one's cool. The one that we chose to do was his favorite record. So he liked talking about that. And part of where that book develops is you're like, okay, so there's the record. Now what's the book there? And the book is, okay, let's do a book on the first 39 games, because that's the games that make up the record. Not every game is going to have a bunch of great stuff. Some are, some aren't. So the ones that don't have a bunch of great stuff is a chance for you to tell the story. Start of the book is going to be, okay, get Wayne Gretzky to that point in his career and explain to the reader why 50 goals is such a big deal. And then go through the record and then explain why him breaking the record was a big deal, how it changed his career. Because really, that record took him, I can remember as a kid, there was posters for Titan sticks that had Gretzky and Bossy on them. Or you read stories in the hockey news where guys go, well, Brian Trottier is just as good as Gretzky, because they hadn't won the cup yet. There was all that. When Gretzky did the 50 and 39, that was the moment where people went, okay, he's above everybody. He's the guy. So any doubt or anything ended with the 50 and 39. Sure, it would be a couple more years till he won the cup. Sure, it would be this, but the 50 and 39 was so beyond people's level that it was like, okay, the year before, Mike Bossy did 50 and 50 to tie. I mean, Rocket Richard's record had hung around for 35 years or something like that. And Bossy finally ties it, 50 and 50. And then the very next year, Gretzky shaves 11 games off that. It's hard for people today to comprehend how, like, just unbelievable that was. And, I mean, he did that literally before we even turned the calendar on the year. Because it was 39 games. He did that before we got into the new year.
Wow, I didn't even realize that.
And part of the funny part of that is when he was on his pace, because he had the pace, they started following it. As I said, he had 40 goals in 37 games or whatever. So people were circling, okay, in 3 weeks they play Toronto, on Saturday night, and that'll be like his 47th game, and that could be the record breaker. Wow. The record breaker happened so quick. The actual game where he scored the 5 was only broadcast on Edmonton television. It was not on CBC. It wasn't anywhere. And it happened late. So the cool part of that book is you have the reaction was like, he does the record too fast. There's nobody there when he does it. He breaks the record. There's nobody there. Like there's only, I think there's 3 pictures from the night.
What?
Of the game. There's not there's the video, and there's one camera guy who just took the reg from the Edmonton Journal who took the pictures. It's just not, it happens almost too quick. Then of course the next 3 weeks it's catch-up time. So by the time they do get to Toronto 2.5 weeks later, it's such a big deal that Gretzky has to hold a press conference at the Royal York Hotel. Just him, from everybody in the media wanting to talk to him. That's the moment where he becomes Wayne Gretzky. So that was the book on that one.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. Yeah. Well, Flem, maybe you can read that book to me one night, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. I definitely and might have to get a copy myself. That one intrigues me the most. Just like
Todd, is there pictures in that book? Because Jeff can't read a book without pictures. So
there are pictures in that book.
Okay, good. It's up your alley then, Broeky. It's your speed.
Mm-hmm. Available at Amazon, available on Amazon and Indigo and all the other places.
Perfect. We'll put that up on when we let this out here. So one thing I did want
to definitely have to put that on Facebook. I mean, all the 4 of them there.
So, for sure.
You got a question, Flem?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so kind of maybe even pit off hockey a little bit. So you're involved a lot in minor sports and stuff like that. And I know Jeff and I, this is kind of why we started this too. Is Jeff and I used to coach a lot of youth sports kind of growing up. So what does sports and coaching mean to you as a, in your life? Where does it fit into your life? Is it something you've always been passionate about, and how much do you enjoy it?
Very important. It's a way to give back.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, there were people who volunteered, took the time for no gain, for no financial gain, other than they cared. They cared about the town. They cared about the kids in the town, and they actually gave back. They used their knowledge to help people. They paid it forward, I guess is the term they use today.
Pay it forward sports, no plug there.
You like it. So, yeah. So, that my father coached minor ball. My father coached minor hockey. We had an event here in town. We had hometown hockey right before COVID happened here. And my father, when he coached hockey, one of his players here in COVID went on to become an NHL player, Steve Smith.
Okay, yeah.
And Steve, of course, Steve was made that part of that Oilers team that won all those cups. Was with Team Canada in the 91 Canada Cup. So Steve was like local boy makes good. Well, my dad coached him at Bantam. So when we did hometown hockey, Steve was one of the guests because of his career. And I was one of the guests because of the writing. So I've known Steve since I was a little kid. So it was nice to see him again. People came down to the set of hometown hockey who had played with Steve back in the 70s and came down to see him and talk. And I happened to be beside him. And of course, those same guys now that are older were coached by my dad. Dad passed away 5 years ago soon. So these guys would come up and talk about Dad and his coaching and how much they loved him as a coach and how great he was at this, and this. You know what? That's why we do it. Right?
Agreed. Yeah, 100%.
If we can pay it forward, even today, I was fortunate enough. I mean, I've coached a bunch of kids, and some years were good years and some years were growing years, I guess is how you would phrase it. Yep. But I'm pretty lucky that I can go around town, and now you see some of the kids that you used to coach when they were 12 are 18 or 19, or they're at university or whatever. And every time they see you, it's that connection. that thrill. They want to talk to you. They ask how you're doing. You ask how they're doing. I mean, that's why we do it. I mean, really, the rest of it is all just, noise and paperwork and all that. But we do it for that. Does it make us feel a little bit older? Yeah. Yeah, it does. But,
I'll even go with that one. Sometimes you're looking, 1 year they're 11 years old, the next they're 21 drinking. And it's like, wait a minute, we're 10 years ago,
Exactly.
Fleming and I were just talking before you come on that one of the kids that we used to coach, he coached in baseball and I coached him in hockey about 10 years ago.
Todd was at the game last night.
Oh, okay. So he ended up being the call-up goalie. And I know it was an emergency call-up, but for the Colorado Avalanche, Jed Alexander from the county. So it's kind of neat, right? It hasn't quite made the show, but still he was officially in a game, I guess, as a backup. So cool to see.
Yeah. And you have that little thing of, hey, I knew him when.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah. And we kind of get it all our pay for in sports tournaments too. That a lot of guys that come to the tournaments now are kids we used to coach. When we were in kind of university or college, and now they're kind of coming to our events and playing. And it's always just great to catch up with them and just to see kind of where life takes them. Right. I mean, it's something you're a part of their lives, right? You put that time in when they were young, and it's nice to contribute to someone's life. It doesn't have to be necessarily in sports. It's just kind of how you run a team and bring the kids together, right? So
totally,
it's a great thing you do. Love it.
Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
you got any questions?
I did have one more here I wanted to get in. So Todd, will the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup before Austin Matthews' contract expires?
Wow.
That's an easy two-letter.
Shut up, Broeky. Let's just mute Broeky here for a minute, and then we'll let the adults talk.
He's got 2 years left?
3 years this year, and then 2 more. So 2.5 years. They got 3 runs at it.
And you're resigned to the fact that he isn't going to be around after this contract?
Yes. That is the parameters of the question.
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, I'd like to see them probably win a playoff round first before we started talking about the playoffs.
Interview over. Cut it off.
I mean, hey, anything can happen. You saw it last year with Montreal, right? Yeah. Who had Montreal making the final? Mm-hmm. It's all about – the playoffs are all about momentum, getting on a roll, getting confidence. The one thing I'll say with him is he can't do it alone. I mean, they'll have to have the goaltending. They'll have to have their defense play a lot better than they did in the playoffs last year. Yeah. And he'll have to be better. But you know what? Mitch Marner's got to be better next year in the playoffs. I mean, and the regular season's great, but, the playoffs a different beast. It shuts down. The penalties aren't as frequent. A lot more clutching, a lot more grabbing. And, I mean, I think for them, I mean, if they can get that monkey off their back and win a playoff series, then who knows, right? Sky's the limit. But until you win that playoff series, that's the monkey. And, I mean, and even I know Leaf fans, I mean, it's one thing that they lost. I mean, they lost Game 5, they lost Game 6. Game 7 was just like,
they knew it was over this game.
Yeah, there was no urgency. There was nothing there. And even I had Leaf fans. I'm watching the game at a buddy's place where he's a diehard Leaf fan. My phone is blowing up with Leaf fans telling me they're done. I hate this. I hate this team. It was the second period.
Yep.
But it was obvious.
Yeah.
It was obvious. So, I mean, you just hope that they'll respond better. And if they don't, could be interesting.
Yeah. No, that'll be a dicey situation for sure. But I got
one last question just to kind of go on with your.
I got one after you, Broeky.
At the start of the conversation here, the podcast, the Quebec situation. Do you ever think there will be another team in Quebec, such as the Arizona Coyotes, moving there, or do you think that ship is gone? It's sailed.
My heart. As much as I hated the Nordiques as a kid, hated them.
Yeah.
My heart says yes. I've been in the building. I've watched a game in the building. It's an NHL rink.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous rink. Like, it's got all the stuff. Ironically, I had seats directly behind the bench in Patrick Waugh during the game. I saw them a couple years ago. I saw Lafreniere actually play there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, great arena, great atmosphere. It's just, it doesn't move the needle in the States, right? And that's where the ownership all is. Now, you got to have a situation like you did with Atlanta, where Winnipeg was ready to go. So the league didn't get embarrassed, right? Winnipeg was ready to go. And that's what Quebec's done. They're ready to go. So it'll be interesting whether it's the Coyotes. That seems to be everybody always seems to point out Arizona. But there was somebody else who I read isn't in great shapes.
Florida Panthers?
Florida Panthers, yeah. That one seems to be the likely too, because you don't have to switch a conference then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And they love having the 16 teams in the one, the 16 in the other. And they don't want to mess with that. And I get it. But I would sure love that. I mean, that would be great.
Yeah, I would love it too. And then it puts eight teams in Canada, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the Quebec fans are some of the best fans, in the NHL. I mean, you go to Habs game, everybody's in their seat, ready to go before the Habs come on the ice. It's not like that in Toronto, Ottawa, or any other city, really.
Even at the Leaf game last night, there were guys in the crowd with Nordiques jerseys on.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And they haven't been there since 95.
That's awesome. I love it.
It's just the passion they have. They have so much passion in Quebec and all around for that team. And it'd be so good. Just add another rivalry to the Canadian market. It'd be great. I mean, the league's got to make a lot of their money from Canada. I don't care what they say. Toronto is floating. Toronto's floating. Phoenix, Florida, Tampa Bay, probably.
Oh yeah. Well, Tampa Bay, I think, does a lot better than Florida does, just because they've had such a good team. They've got a better organization, and there's a lot of snowbirds down there. I think they do a lot better compared to Florida's kind of the Miami area or just Fort Lauderdale kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, Flem, you had another question.
Yeah, I just got one more, Broeky, before we wrap up here. So it's kind of a two-parter, Todd. So give me one book recommendation, a sports book that you think the viewer should read that's a good read. And give us one guest, a local guy that maybe you think be a good interview for us on the podcast.
Okay, so I'll give a local guy a shout out. He's a local. He does some sports writing. I think he's on that. Is it Total Sports Quinty?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Jeff Gard.
Okay. Yeah. So we had Randy Ewens on actually, and so Jeff does it with him. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff. I know Jeff quite well. I've known Jeff since he started out, so I'll give a local shout out to Jeff, because Jeff used to be down our neck of the woods, and now he's gone closer to you guys.
Okay.
So I'll give Jeff Gard a shout out because he's local, and you always got to support local.
Absolutely, 100%.
In terms of books, I mean, my God, if it's a hockey book, there's so many good ones depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something more current, if you're looking for something older, I mean, there's literally a ton of them. I mean, I'm biased. I mean, my favorite hockey book ever is The Game by Ken Dryden. Oh, yeah. Favorite book, super book. Mm-hmm. And it really does the best at describing, because he was there, and even though it's older now, what it's like in the dressing room, the interaction with the coaches, the players, the feelings on the ice. That would be the hockey book I would recommend to anybody. I mean, I've read the book so many times now. I've only got probably 9 different editions of it. But there's a lot of good books out there. Ones, especially in the sports one. I mean, depending if you're a baseball fan, football fan, I mean, a lot of good stuff coming out now. If you're a baseball guy, there's a guy just wrote a book, huge book. Don't let the price scare you. By Joe Posnanski, called The Baseball 100, where he picks the 100 best baseball players of all time, and it's great because it's an essay on each. Wow. And the essays about the players it's great reading because you can read 4 or 5 pages and then put it aside. Mm-hmm. 4 or 5 pages, put it aside. And just the way he writes about these players, even people you think you know a bunch about, his writing style is so conversational. It's like sitting in a bar, and it's so well, and you learn things that you didn't even know. And I can't recommend that book enough. I just read that about a month ago. Super, super book. It's brand new. But yeah, there's a lot of great books out there.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think if you read that book, Broeky, you'd probably be about till 2099 till you finish it. So
It's not my reading tonight.
I didn't know you could read, buddy. But do you have any more questions, Broeky?
No, not at the moment. I think it's been awesome to hear, about the Gretzky come on and the players you've interviewed and the books you've read. Now I kind of want to go do some research and read the books and find more information about it. So, and I hope some of our viewers do as well. And we're going to try and tag your books and tell people where they can get copies and whatnot. So really appreciate you coming on today. It's a different grasp of what we've done, and that's what we're trying to do is get as many different viewers as we can. So it's been awesome to meet you, and it's been awesome to talk with you today.
Perfect. Anytime, guys.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Todd. We appreciate it. And we just love the work you're doing in the community. So keep paying it forward. And all
pay
the best.
It forward. There you go. I love
it. All right. Thanks a lot, buddy. We appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on tonight.
Take care.
Bye. All right, guys. And that was our interview with Todd Denault, a local author here. So we just want to thank Todd again for coming on. Lots of great stories. Loved the Denny Savard and Patrick Waugh story about Kelly Rudy. We'll have to maybe tag him in that one. But Broeky's ducked out here. He's having some internet problems in Mexico. So we'll be back next week, and enjoy the show, guys.